Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. I will say I often wonder if I want to trade do I want to wear the mask or go through the drama of the PCR tests? So Judy, I don't know what to tell you. Either one has its challenges. So we are in Parshat Ki Tisa. This week's Torah reading is full of drama. There's the golden calf. There's Moses coming down from the mountain with tablets. There's breaking tablets. There's new tablets. There's carrying around the broken tablets. Moses gets to see God's tuchus. It's one of my favorite moments in the Torah. It's true. But I actually sort of got stuck just on the first verse of this week's Torah reading. This happens more often than you would expect. When you count the children of Israel, ki tisa et bnei Yisrael lifkudehem, numbering each one of them, each shall give a ransom for their soul. V'natnu ish kofer nafsho. Kofer nafsho. So when you count the children of Israel, this group of people currently wandering through the desert, seeking new home, new identity, what does it mean that each person will give a ransom for their soul? There is a concrete context here that Israelite men over the age of 20 were considered to be potential fighters. There's an assumption that they will be called upon to fight. There is an assumption they may be called upon to kill. Speaking about kofer nefesh, a ransom for one's soul, it is acknowledging that there is potential future harm. But this root of the word ransom, kofer, kuf pe resh, for those of you who are studying Hebrew, at whatever level you are, you may already have learned, hopefully you have, that these three-letter roots to Hebrew words are like suitcases that you are constantly unpacking. So kuf pe resh, there's so many words related to this, and all of them have something to do with covering or uncovering, with protection. This same Hebrew root for kofer in this sentence is the basis for Yom Kippur, what we usually call the Day of Atonement, though it's not entirely about forgiveness. It might make more sense to call it the day of repairing, restoring. And it's also the basis for the word kapara. This is the term in the days of the temple when the high priest would sprinkle blood on the altar. Gruesome, weird, fascinating. We don't do it anymore, thank goodness. Rabbinical school, butchers, it's a lot. But that sprinkling of the blood on the altar was sort of a way of protecting that there would be this barrier between God and the priests when there was this moment of connection. It was like dangerous to be directly in contact with God, and this was a way of a barrier of protection for the Kohanim. And this same term, kapara, the same root, is popularly used in modern Hebrew as a way to refer to someone you love, the way you might use sweetheart. Kapara, kapara sheli. I had lots of mostly older women in Israel called me this when I lived in Jerusalem. It's a lovely expression. I'm going to dive into it. So it all comes from the same three letters. Like every root in Hebrew, there's a lot packed in. So back to our first verse of our Torah reading. V'natnu ish kofer nafsho. Each person shall give kofer for their soul. So in the ancient context, they're assuming that people might cause harm and that some sort of atonement might be necessary. It's sort of putting a protection on your soul before you might even be called upon to do something harmful. When we approach Yom Kippur, we're supposed to think about some of the ways we might have caused harm over the previous year to ourselves, to others, the ways that we can give kapara for our souls through prayer or reflection, restoring balance, renewing relationships for the new year. But if in modern Hebrew, this expression, kapara sheli, if someone calls you my kapara, they are telling you that you are so adored, that your presence in the world helps renew things that feel broken, that your existence in life helps restore what feels incomplete in someone's soul. It's a lot deeper than sweetheart. So I'm reading this kofer in the Torah verse as kapara instead. The rabbis can do it, so why can't we? Instead of kofer, read kapara. It's one letter off, but it's the same root, it's the same word. When you count the children of Israel, v'natnu ish kapara nafsho. Instead of each person will give a ransom for their soul, each person will have someone who loves them so much that their presence restores their soul. Their existence is healing. I think about this term a lot, kapara sheli, the one who is my kapara. For whom am I the kapara, the one whose presence in the world is a balm? Who do I call kapara sheli, the ones who their existence is healing to my soul? It is also a very generational term. This is very much, something that I would say to people younger than I am, that people older than I am would say to me. And so, I think you all know this, but there's a lot of you who I don't see because you can see me and I can't see you, but there's a lot of you here as well. And in case you don't know this, I am a lesbian. I may have mentioned it before. I am a lesbian. And like many LGBTQ folks, I grew up in a family where I did not have direct biological LGBTQ ancestors that I know of. And in my family now, even my extended family, I do not have any younger LGBTQ relatives, again, that I know of yet, to whom I might one day seem like an ancestor. I hold out hope. There are some young ones. But I'm 45 years old now, which, by the way, is a great age for being able to have friends who are twice my age and to have friends who are half my age. There's a relatively short range in which you can really truly say that, and I feel like I'm right in that golden moment. It's fantastic. So when I think about that phrase, kapara sheli, I'm thinking about what it means to love all of our queer generations, to feel that each of our generations could really be a balm to the previous one. Kapara sheli, the one whose existence is healing to my soul. I hope that in our existence, that each of us who is alive today, that our presence in the world is somehow liberating to souls who came before us. And I will tell you that when we turn around during Lachadodi to bow and welcome the Shabbos Queen, to see the names on the wall here is like to see, right, who are the ancestors who, like, I'm trying my best in the world to be a balm to their souls. And I look to those who are younger than I am now, and I think, oh, kapara sheli, the ones whose lives we hope will be redemptive for us, as each generation expands our understanding of what is possible in the world, of what we can expect in the world. Kapara sheli. I remember years ago the long hug, like I can still feel it, the long hug that I got from Leslie Feinberg, Zichroneh livracha. It was a long hug. And the feeling that there was somehow strength and comfort and liberation being passed along to me through that hug. Kapara sheli. Each person who finds or creates the language for their experience, each person who expects that the world will treat them with respect and dignity, each person who insists on being proudly exactly who they are, all of this contributes to the liberation of those who come later. So here we are in Tisa. V'natnu ish kapara nafsho is how I am reading this. You will give each person someone who loves them so much that their presence liberates their soul. These days I find myself hoping more than ever that my presence and queer joy somehow elevates and liberates the souls of those who came before me. And I feel my own soul being elevated and liberated by those coming out today and being fully and joyfully themselves. One of my favorite writers, master storyteller Ivan Coyote, published a book last year of correspondence they received from readers and their own responses. I want to read 2 excerpts from these letters. So first, I am learning to find comfort in the fact that one day I will have lived long enough to become old-fashioned, that my words and books and stories will be dusted off and read to remind ourselves of a time when trans people still had to battle for rights, for the ability to thrive and love and be celebrated. I continue to fight for the day when we don't have to fight anymore. So I love this phrase of Ivan's, of living long enough to become old-fashioned. I will admit that I am on TikTok, and those are the moments when I most feel it. When I see 15-year-olds referring to their queer elders, and I realize that they mean people in their 30s, and I'm like, oh heavens. It's, wow, anyway. And then I think about like the books that I read when I was coming out, when I was, this like young, putting my toe into the world that I had not had any models for. And these pioneering stories of gay and lesbian and bisexual experiences, of transgender and non-binary identities. And in some of them, those stories were in language that, within a few years or a few decades, like that language was totally outdated. And you read them now and it's like a historical artifact. And you're like, wow, like 20 years ago, this felt cutting edge and it was so deep for me. And now, like, I'm almost, like, I almost don't want to pass it on because I'm so worried about that, is it going to communicate something that I don't want to pass along in the world to young people who don't need to understand certain things about shame, who I don't want to have certain experiences that were hard, that many of us had. Rereading those early books now can kind of be a study in layers of history and trauma, which has value and also has a lot of pain. But we need to know what those are to be able to be a healing presence for each other. So I'm returning to Ivan Coyote for a minute. I wish we could trust one another more, forgive each other easier, welcome and hold and teach each other without punishing those of us who are newer or older or younger or who arrive on our doorsteps without the right words or clothes or politics. I wish we didn't turn so much of the hate aimed at us inward and flip and bite our brothers and sisters and siblings simply because of their proximity, because they are available, and because they're so much easier to sink our teeth into than our real enemies are. In Queer Family, we are all called to be elders, present or future. We're all constantly learning, all of us having faced or facing worlds whose challenges are different, but with threats to our joy in every generation. And we're continually learning as we try to build worlds that are more gentle, more welcoming, more expansive, more generous. So I'm thinking about those who I consider to be my LGBTQ elders, including some of the ones on this wall, and I am imagining them calling me Kapara Sheli, the one who redeems me, the one who is my joy in the world. And as I move through middle age towards, God willing, one day being really a queer elder to others, not actually one of those 35-year-olds who are currently horrified at 15-year-olds telling them they think they're elders, but like a real elder, I am already feeling delight and redemption at seeing younger people hold the world to higher standards than anything I could have imagined possible 20 years ago. Kapara Sheli. Kapara Sheli. May our existence be liberating and healing and joyful. Shabbat Shalom.